Welcome to episode 2 of the Ice Guys NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs show, talking about everything Stanley Cup playoffs from a betting standpoint. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review, joined once again this week by my co-host Andrew McInnes from the Maritime Provinces, the lovely Maritime Provinces in the East Coast. Andrew, how are you today? Have you enjoyed the first week of these playoffs so far?
I'm doing great, and I've definitely enjoyed it, Ian. It's been almost overwhelming that every single day there's a great game to watch. It's just been great to be a sports fan, and I'm loving it and can't wait for the weeks to continue.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We've got lots of excitement on the horizon here throughout these playoffs. Let's go through each series. We're going to go pretty quick. We're going to keep this to a 30-minute show today and just break down key points in each series. We're going to start with Pittsburgh-Columbus. Of course, Columbus comes out with that huge effort, down 2-0 in the series yesterday. Gets off to a very good start, 3-1 early in the first period. And then from that point on, from really the second period onward, Pittsburgh took control of that game. Puck possession, territorial play, all in favor of the Penguins. And they got it revved up. And to be honest with you, shocking as it may be to say that this, He's been outplayed by Marc-Andre Fleury in this series. Marc-Andre Fleury's been the better of these two goaltenders, something I never would have thought could have happened before this series. Now, I've always known Fleury a capable goalie, but he has bettered Sergei Bobrovsky in this series, made some key saves to keep Pittsburgh in that game, allow them to come back and eventually win the game. What a performance by Jake Guentzel, the guy I talked about last week. They plug him in midway through the season due to all kinds of injuries, calling him up from Wilkes-Barre Scranton, put him on the top line with Sidney Crosby, and look how Jake Guentzel's playing. Another guy that just slides into the Pittsburgh lineup seamlessly, produces and scores big goals at big times for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They now have a commanding 3-0 series lead. Any way back for the Columbus Blue Jackets, Andrew? Any way back for them at all?
Well, coming into this series, you and I both thought it would be a relatively good series. I think you and I were both fairly confident. We were fairly pushing the Pittsburgh Penguins. We really thought they'd be strong. And strong is probably an understatement to come back after being down 3-1. Less than 10 minutes into the game yesterday, Ian, there are 4 goals in the game. Columbus Blue Jackets led 3-1. And I'm just going to point one thing out, the fact that, you look at guys like Chris Kunitz, for example. He played on a line for years with Sidney Crosby. Not to discredit his skill, but look how much better Sidney Crosby made him. And he's scoring goals, right? And not that he's not skillful as well, but Crosby can probably set up anybody. He does his job. He's a goal scorer. He had one of the best goal scoring years probably of his career as far as points and overall. And like I mentioned last week, he's in kind of the later half of his career. So just the fact that this team did not give up after being down 3-1, made it look easy and just came back. It's kind of funny because last week I asked you about Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray. And then, of course, we see Marc-Andre Fleury getting the start for the Penguins due to the Matt Murray injury. So, Tortorella, I watched his interview yesterday, and, he's just saying he's not too impressed with his team as far as, resiliency, but it's just a hockey game. They had one more game to go. I'm going to say the next game is going to be a very low-scoring game. Again, this is one of those teams for me where I think that if they are going to win a game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sergei Bobrovsky is going to have to steal a game. And I'm sure you can agree with me on that if it's a 4-3 game, if you told me someone won 4-3, I'd probably tell you that's probably the Pittsburgh Penguins. If it's going to be maybe a 3-1 game like it was in the first period, I'm all over the Columbus Blue Jackets. But a lot of credit to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They've been scoring. It's their depth and goaltending. With the fact that you can have 2 goalies, Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray, that can stand on their head like that, it's unreal. And as we'll continue this show, we're going to talk more and more about different goaltending displays we saw over this last week.
Yeah, and I'm looking for an APB here on the captain, Nick Foligno. Where's he been? He's got to pick it up a little bit for this Columbus team. Brandon Saad's got to pick it up. Seth Jones has been okay at times in this series from the back end, but he hasn't put that imprint, that thumbnail on this series that you expect an impact defenseman like him to do. So Columbus has a lot of areas they've got to improve here. Now, in terms of betting strategy, how do I bet these series that are 3-0 and a team's looking to avoid a sweep? Well, usually if it's a complete and total mismatch series, I'll look to bet the team to complete the sweep. I don't know if this has been a complete mismatch series. You look at Columbus in the first two games against Pittsburgh. There were times they heavily outshot Pittsburgh at times in both of those games. Game 3 was not exactly a runaway at all for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They had to come on late. Obviously, they were better, much better team in the last two periods going into overtime, but Columbus hasn't been completely steamrolled. So I'd be reluctant to call for the Pittsburgh sweep in Game 4. Lean a little bit to Columbus for me right now, personally, in Game 4. Don't know if I'll bet it, but we'll see closer to game time. Again, Game 4, Tuesday night at Nationwide Arena. All right, let's go to Montreal New York Rangers now. Montreal Canadiens, after really being 20 seconds it was from a 2-0 series deficit when they tied up Game 2. 14 seconds, exactly. And they tie it up late in the dying seconds, 1-1. Montreal wins it in overtime. And boy, if you believe in momentum, it carried over into Game 3. I actually bet Montreal in Game 3 of this series, and I expected that momentum to carry over because that was a tough crushing loss for the Rangers, so close to a 2-0 series lead. Radulov's been phenomenal. That overtime winner, just an incredible goal. The old Forsberg move in Game 3 last night to put that one away. That was the 3-0 goal that Montreal scored in that game. He's played great. Montreal's finally starting to put some pucks at the net and in the net. They outshot the Rangers last night in that game. They've had the better of the play now in 2 straight games. The New York Rangers need a response here in Game 4, but I said this on the preview show last week to you, Andrew. I don't like to bet the New York Rangers at home. This was a much better road team. Madison Square Garden is not an intimidating arena. The crowd's very quiet. They sit on their hands most of the game, and the Rangers have not played great hockey at home. So Montreal's got momentum. It's a Ranger spot. Mark my word, it's a Ranger spot. They can't afford to go down 3-1. They need this game. I'm probably not going to bet Montreal here, but I'm very reluctant to bet the Rangers, even though the spot says they need this one badly to tie it up.
Well, like you and I both really figured it would be. It started off as a huge goaltending matchup between Henrik Lundqvist and Carey Price, as expected. And like you very much said last week, Ian, the Habs were struggling to score goals. Julian was juggling his lines, in my opinion, far too much. We had Alex Galchenyuk, I'd say one of their best goal scorers in their team that's underutilized, on the 4th line playing center. And it just doesn't make any sense to me in that sense. One thing I want to point out for this Montreal Canadiens team, in comparison to the years past, Ian, is that they actually do have some aggressiveness. When you pick up guys like Steve Ott, Andrew Shaw, even just having Jordy Ben on the blue line, stuff like that makes you more of a tough team. If you're a tough team and you have more confidence being aggressive, it also just makes you feel more comfortable to just go out and score, do whatever you want. In game number 1, I really thought that Radulov was kind of underutilized. I really felt that he wasn't out there enough. He's a very solid guy. He's built like a tank. He needs to be out there to just get the puck behind the net and make plays. When you get the puck to him, it's hard to hit him. It's hard to shake him off the puck. So heading things out to that, I really think that continuing, I'm going to stand strong with my Montreal pick. But if I were you guys, I would definitely look to bet low under the total in the next game as far as the betting standpoint. Absolutely, I think that if Montreal Canadiens can get some goals in, then this New York Rangers team can't really keep up. They're kind of like the Boston Bruins used to be. They're known for being aggressive and chippy. They've got Zuccarello, Chris Kreider. They're like those rats that just skate around the net trying to be pesky, kind of like Gallagher does. So if they continue to do that, they might get a couple bang-ins on Carey Price, but it takes a lot to beat him. I'm going to stay confident with my Habs for them in the next game.
Yeah, one point about the Rangers, they've cruised along, especially early in the season. They were one of the top offensive teams in the NHL. But if you look at the metrics and the analytics and those stats, in terms of shooting percentage, it was off the chart. I mean, it seems like every quality chance, the majority of them were going in the net. Their shooting percentage was high. It had to regress at some point. They were not generate the goals. The number of goals they were scoring was not correlated with the number of chances they were generating. And as a result, now playoffs are here. It's getting a little tougher to score. A little better checking now, a little more block shots, more guys diving in front of pucks in front of the net. And we're seeing now the Rangers, maybe they're not quite the offensive juggernaut that they were early in the season that some people seem to believe. They've come back to the mean now as the defense gets tighter, the checking gets tighter, and we're not seeing the Rangers score anywhere close lately to the amount of goals they did early in the season. So, yeah, in terms of a series that I'm looking to bet over, not that you've been doing very well here in the Stanley Cup playoffs betting overs in any of these series. It's been an under fiesta here so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but this is definitely one series that should fit an under bill when all is said and done. All right, the next series in the East, we have a game on tap tonight in this series. Ottawa-Boston, 1-1 series going back to the TD Garden in Boston. What a rally from the Ottawa Senators. And this was really the first time, maybe in my lifetime, watching Erik Karlsson play hockey. I saw a little passion from this guy, a little barking on the bench to the refs, to his teammates. Let's go, showing some leadership. I actually questioned this guy's leadership skills in the past, but he led his team on the bench in terms of his conduct and, constantly talking, trying to keep everybody pumped up and motivated and confident. And then on the ice, he just made great plays in the third period. Of course, the tying goal, what a tremendous, spin around the back of the net, back out to the top of the point, and just draws everybody puck watching on Boston. He slides it over to Brassard for that fantastic goal, tying that game. And then, of course, Dion Phaneuf point shot, winning it in overtime. Big momentum on Ottawa's side. And Boston played better at home late in the season, but not a great home team by any stretch. Some momentum. Keep an eye on these defensive injuries. Not sure yet whether we see any of them back. Krug in particular for the Boston Bruins. I think it's not going to be a bigger play for me, but I think Ottawa at the plus price is worth some kind of look here in Game 3 tonight. A little momentum off that overtime victory. And if Erik Karlsson leads by example the way he did in Game 2, Ottawa's a much different team.
I'm going to stick to what I said in our first NHL preview show, Ian. I'm not buying it. I watched that game. I had some action on Boston. They're down they're up 3-1 on the Senators, and is an excellent push. I'm going to believe you and say that they definitely do have some momentum right now. Obviously, that's a huge goal. Dion Phaneuf, he's not really much of a goal scorer, not known for big plays like that, and gets the big slapper from the blue line. But I'm going to continue to push what I've been saying about this Bruins team being a playoff team. They have what it takes. They're aggressive. They have depth. They know where to find the puck. You watch Brad Marchand. He finds the puck. He's maybe, I don't even know how tall, 5'10", probably shorter than that. He just finds a way to get to the net. And players like that are what helps a team get by games. But the thing about the Boston Bruins is that they just have the depth. And the Ottawa Senators, you talk about Erik Karlsson. A lot of people are hating on him this weekend about his actual defensive abilities, but he's so fast that he's able to come back. Ian, if I think that the Senators win, it's going to be because him and all the other Senators defense actually end up pinching up a lot more. The Senators can't be conservative against this Boston team. If it's going to be a conservative matchup, they're going to cause way too many turnovers, and I think the Boston Bruins will run away with it, get too many breakaways, and so on and so forth. So I definitely think the Ottawa Senators looked a little bit in discomfort in Game 1. But in Game 2, they looked kind of just comfortable. They played their game, and that's why they ended up doing well. And now we head to Boston.
Yeah, for me, it's a value price type of lean for me here with the Ottawa side. I just don't think there's hardly any situation in the Stanley Cup playoffs with parity at its peak, with anybody able to win on any given night, with the fluke bounces you see, with the odd penalty calls that you see. I don't know if there's any reason to ever lay minus 165 in a playoff game. I really don't. I think there's usually, if I see a price like this with Boston laying this kind of price, I either try to make a case for the other team as the dog, or I pass the game, and that's what I'm doing. I'm making a small case here for Ottawa based on the momentum of winning that game in overtime. You bring up Dion Phaneuf not getting many big goals like that from the point. Hell, he doesn't hit the net half the time with his point shot. How about 3/4 of the time? I mean, you're lucky 1 out of every 10 shots from the point that Dion Phaneuf hits the net. I mean, really, it's that bad with this guy. I mean, target practice, badly he is in need of it, but what a time for him to finally find the net with that overtime goal for Ottawa in Game 2. And that we end the Eastern Conference look with Washington and Toronto. You know what? It's not crazy to suggest Toronto could be up 2-0 in this series. I mean, it is unbelievable what this young Leafs team has done. They have stood toe-to-toe, mano-a-mano, have not given an inch whatsoever to this juggernaut Washington Capitals team. This young team looks like they're okay with this big, bruising, physical playoff style of hockey. It doesn't seem to bother them one bit. The way they rallied, I mean, with Roman Polak going down with that bad injury in game number 2, 5 defensemen, a lot of them young. Martin Marincin hadn't played in a lot in the Leafs lineup down the stretch of the season. He's got to pick up slack. Connor Carrick, Gardner, Riley, go on down the list. This blue line was fantastic for the Toronto Maple Leafs, picking up the slack for Roman Polak. They really took the play to Washington at times in both games. And if I'm the Washington Capitals, now that I've lost that game in overtime, Kasperi Kapanen has all of a sudden come out of nowhere, joined the Leaf roster 2 weeks ago, and now he's scoring big goals left and right. Game 81, he scores the tying goal against Pittsburgh, which helped them clinch their playoff spot that night. If you're Washington now, that seed of doubt has been planted. Now you're starting to think now a little bit, second guess yourself. Here we go again. Playoff, struggles that we've had in the past, getting past the second round, something we've never done. Hell, now you're starting to say to yourself, are we even going to get past the first round against a team with 9 rookies in it? I mean, you're starting to really ask yourself that now if you're the Washington Capitals. I'm telling you, Washington, I don't buy them as a minus 160 favorite here on the road in Game 3 with the pressure that's on them and the way the Leafs have been every bit as good so far in 2 games as Washington. This is a young team. Do their heads get a little bit, big after that win? That's a concern if I'm Toronto. Do I, have a little bit of a letdown after that huge overtime win? But this young team has proven time and time again they didn't have a letdown after losing Game 1 in overtime in heartbreaking fashion. They came back and played just as good, if not better, in Game 2. It's another game. If I bet it, I'd rather take the plus price home underdog than I would lay the price with Washington. A team might be starting to feel a little bit more playoff pressure like they have so many times in recent years where they've come up short.
Well, I think you can fully agree that the pressure really is on Washington, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% it's on Washington coming into tonight and for the rest of this series. Now, they're going to be able to relax a little bit if they get this win under their belt, and they did play well on the road. They did get a late regular season win in Toronto in pretty commanding fashion, but that Toronto team, you got to throw that in the garbage as far as I'm concerned. The Toronto team you saw that night in that regular season game against Washington, that's not the Toronto team you've seen play Washington twice here on the road in this series. They are not scared of this Washington team. They are not intimidated. Frederik Andersen's played every bit as well in goal for them as Braden Holtby in this series. Washington's got a tiger on their hands right now.
I fully agree, and I'm definitely going to say that the Leafs are absolutely in this series. When you have the first 2 games against the Washington Capitals, the President Trophy winners, going to overtime, I mean, would you have guessed that? If I told you that, you probably would have looked at me like I'm an idiot.
Nope, definitely not.
Those 2 teams doing really well, but I'm looking at Frederik Andersen right now. He is keeping his Leafs team in it, and as a young team for the Leafs, that gives you so much confidence if your goalie's playing very well behind you like that. You've got kind of a team that's young, but I think, Ian, that helps them because they're the most hungry. Right now, obviously, this Capitals team hasn't done well. They've had their playoff struggles. A lot of the players on this Leafs team, it's their first playoffs ever. So they don't really have too much pressure, unlike the Caps, how they've been pretty upset with how they performed in the playoffs in the past. The Leafs are just going out and playing their game. Like you mentioned, going down with the defense, down to about 5 defensemen. That's rough for them, and they've really bought into it. Babcock, Olympic coach, and he's coached numerous national teams, did very well with Detroit for several years. Try and tell me he's not making a huge impact on this Leafs team. He's doing absolutely great. You see that on TV, every shift, if someone does something wrong or he wants to change something, he doesn't hold back. He'll tell Austin Matthews, William Nylander, he'll be whispering stuff to them on the bench all the time, and I think it helps. Mitch Marner, what a play from him, scoring goals, assists, and one thing about Mitch Marner, if you watch him on the ice tonight, his anticipation. You look at the way he plays, he's not just playing out there to score. He's playing out there for the Toronto Maple Leafs, not playing for the name on the back of the jersey with the logo on the front. And that's what I think separates him from a lot of other, young stars in this league. This Leafs team and him and Austin Matthews are really just bought into the Toronto Maple Leafs program. They don't really care about individual stats. But at the same time, Ian, Ovechkin still hasn't really gotten too dangerous, and I expect him to heat up even more. Steal a game against this Maple Leafs team. It's been quite a bit of an over the total type of series. And if things go under the total, I'm definitely going to lean towards the Capitals tonight. Like you said, the price is kind of in the favor of the Capitals. So if on a total standpoint, I would look under the total.
Yeah, and for tonight, if you're Washington, I think everybody outside of Justin Williams can play better on this Capitals side. Kuznetsov's got to be more of a presence. Backstrom can play a little bit better, and Ovechkin can play a little bit better, even though he scored the other night. It's time for Alex Ovechkin to score a goal other than standing there at the hash marks at the circle for 10 seconds, just waiting for the puck to get there on his stick for a one-timer. It's time to crash the net. It's time to do something different. You can't always score your goals that way. I know you love scoring your goals that way, but you got to vary it up a little bit. Can't be that same one-dimensional player. He's got to be a little bit more toward, go to the net a little bit. I haven't seen that from Ovechkin enough so far in this series. We'll see if we see it tonight. Fascinating game. Can't wait to see the response we get from Washington. What kind of response are we going to get from this team that's got big aspirations, just like they have had in many years past? All right, to the Western Conference we go. Let's go to Edmonton, San Jose, a game that was late last night. Edmonton with a 1-0 win, back-to-back shutouts for Cam Talbot. I said that if Cam Talbot's not feeling the workload and fatigue of a long regular season, which he obviously wasn't used to that coming into this season, he's a dangerous goaltender if he doesn't show any signs of fatigue. Boy, he hasn't shown any signs of fatigue so far. He's been fantastic once again, especially in these last two games. And Edmonton's learning to win these 2-1, 3-1, 1-0 games. This is not the defensive sieve they were years ago when they could score goals left and right and couldn't defend or get any kind of adequate goaltending. They're getting solid defense. Adam Larson was a huge addition to this blue line. Look at the way that young Drake Kajula is playing for them on the blue line. Darnell Nurse has been terrific. A physical brand of hockey he's played. All these youngsters really stepping up. Adam Larson, the veteran addition. Chris Russell, I really like the fact they got him because he blocks shots. He's just an incredible sacrifice he shows, to get in front of pucks and block them, help his goaltender out. I like this Edmonton blue line, and they're playing very good right now. And obviously up front, we know with Connor McDavid leading the way, they've got weapons to score goals, but they are showing they can win those tight, low-scoring defensive grinders. I think that was such a huge statement win for Edmonton, showing that they can win a low-scoring game too. And that is why I still think it's a dangerous hockey team. They're now up 2-1 in this series. Fascinated to see if those old 30-plus-year-old legs of the Sharks start to peter out and conk out here as this series progresses, because it's concerning. You've already got Thornton not at 100%, Couture not at 100%, an older San Jose team, the core of this team, 30 years old or higher in age. Go on down the list. Lots of older bodies on this San Jose team. Are they going to start to wear down? I saw a little bit of fatigue in their game in that third period when Edmonton really started to grind that game down. That's a concern for the Sharks moving forward, and they absolutely need the next one in the Shark Tank if they're going to entertain notions of moving on.
Well, Ian, I definitely think this series could be 3-0 Oilers easily, and I think it should be. The Oilers let that game one slip away from them as they were up 2-0. Heading into the next two games, Cam Talbot was amazing. Like you mentioned, you talked about your future bets. You talked about how deep you think the Oilers are going to go, and Cam Talbot's going to be a backbone. One main thing I'm going to say about this Oilers team right now is that, like you mentioned, scoring team they used to be and terrible defensive team they used to be is kind of no longer there. They have adapted very well to playoff hockey. We had, of course, that one shorthanded goal from Connor McDavid that was just amazing about using his speed on the breakaway, and that's fantastic. But right now they're playing hockey and like playoff hockey where Zach Kassian is getting goals. Zach Kassian is being one of their best goal scorers. I thought I would never say that. I would call you insane if you told me that ever. But watching the game last night and watching the way that they're reading plays, watching the way that Darnell Nurse, Adam Larson is getting the puck out of their own end and sending Connor McDavid, sending Leon Draisaitl, sending Patrick Maroon, Milan Lucic, and to help. I mean, a lot of people hated on this Taylor Hall and Adam Larson trade to start. They thought that that was a really weird trade to make and that they would really miss Hall. But right now, the fact that this Oilers team isn't spending too much time in their own end is really helping them, because at least if they're not going to get the most beautiful goals, they're going to be getting those banging goals like Zach Kassian got yesterday. I mean, let's face it, Ian, that wasn't the nicest goal ever. He just anticipated the pass, little weak backhand through the 5-hole. But that's a playoff goal. That's what we're going to get, right?
You know what? Zach Cassian's one of those prototypical guys. You don't hear much from them in the regular season, but they just have that knack of elevating in the playoffs. A guy on San Jose has done that in years past. I'm thinking of Joel Ward. Joel Ward's not a huge regular season performer, but boy, has he scored big goals in the playoffs in the past for San Jose and for Washington. Many years ago. And Zach Cassian's starting to look like that kind of player. Just elevates, it just gets his nose right in the mix of things and scores big goals at big times for this Edmonton team. Very impressive win on the road last night for Edmonton. We'll see if they can keep it going. I sure hope so. I've got them to win the series, got them to win the West and Stanley Cup from a futures perspective. So I hope this Oilers doesn't slow down anytime soon. Speaking of trains that have slowed down, how about a train that's grinded to a complete halt? I'm talking about the Minnesota Wild. Yet another Bruce Boudreau playoff train that has come screeching to a halt. He's already pissed off. 3 games into the playoffs, Andrew, he's pissed off, and he's walking out of the media scrum yesterday saying, don't put words in my mouth. We got a good team. You're trying to make it sound like they're not. I mean, Bruce Boudreau's, when things are going good, he's smiling in the press conferences. He's happy. You know, he's relaxed. He's cracking jokes. And then when things get rough, and it seems to be every playoffs for him, boy, I mean, he just has that, little short fuse, has a hard time dealing with the struggles of his teams in the past. And, let's be honest, Minnesota hasn't played a terrible series by any stretch. Game 1, they were the better team. That game was stolen from them by Jake Allen. I thought Game 2, St. Louis played better. It was a little bit more of an even game. Thought yesterday, they came out pathetic, I thought, Minnesota. St. Louis came out strong. This is the Minnesota team down 2-0 in the series, and it was the Blues having that desperation type of start to that hockey game. I know Minnesota took it to St. Louis later in the game, but their start really bothered me for a team that was down 2-0 in that series. Jake Allen's been the star of the series. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's outplayed Devin Dubnyk. The St. Louis depth forwards have outplayed the Minnesota players. Parise did get on the board yesterday, but where's Jason Zucker? Where's Mikko Koivu? Where the hell are all of these guys for Minnesota in terms of putting the puck in? And Eric Howell has been invisible for this team. Where's Pominville? I mean, go on down the list. Where are these guys? APBs are required. They're down 3-0 now in this series. I don't see a way back for them. I don't. St. Louis is, Mikey O trying to beat the team he used to be a head coach for, and they're well on their way at this point. I just don't see a road back for the Wild.
Well, it all starts with the goaltending, and like you hit it right on the nail. Jake Allen, the local, I said local for myself, but Fredericton, New Brunswick, just a little drive for me. He's been playing out of his mind. And in this playoffs, if you see a team that has a goaltender playing the way he does, they get confident. They get those odd man rushes. They capitalize on their power plays. They're comfortable kind of pushing the pace. Their defensemen, how many times during regular season do you really see a St. Louis Blues defenseman pinching up? I always thought they were a very solid defensive team. They're very conservative, looking like they're ready to attack. This has definitely been a pretty low-scoring series. Minnesota's been getting their shots, but like I've mentioned in the past couple game previews, you can't just get your Ovechkins from the hash mark. You're not going to get that during the playoffs. You have to get in those dirty areas. You have to make those grimy plays in order to score in the playoffs. And they can't be looking for that, Ian. Right now, I feel like every opportunity they're getting is, a 15-foot wrist shot right into the glove of Jake Allen, and that's not going to score for them. So if I'm Bruce Boudreau, who I've got this written down here, 8 division titles in 11 years, and he's only missed the playoffs once since he started coaching in the NHL. If I'm Bruce Boudreau, I want to get at least one game, and that's your focus. I mean, you mentioned it to me last week about Bruce Boudreau, and I thought you were saying it to be comedic, but this is just getting silly. I mean, the fact that he can't get this team to rally for him, it's just unbelievable. And the next game belongs to the Minnesota Wild. You don't like to be that guy that breaks the streak, but if I were you guys, I mean, you could either do one thing. You can ride the streak and just say, hey, look, the Blues lost the game, or you can pound the Minnesota Wild and say they're not going to go down and get swept by the St. Louis Blues. But right now, I don't really think any blame goes to the Minnesota Wild goaltending at all. I mean, they have to support. They have to get some goal scoring. And they kind of have to prove that where they belong there, prove what they did all regular season. Ian, what's the point of doing well in the regular season if you're going to play like this in the playoffs?
They need more of a net front presence. There's no doubt about it. Hasn't been enough of that. There was some in game one, but it seems like after that demoralizing loss, when Jake Allen stole the game, they sort of lost their aggressiveness, got a little bit more timid, and just figured we need the perfect play, the perfect pass, just this perfect little give and go type play instead of just crashing and shooting from anywhere and looking for rebounds. They've sort of abandoned that philosophy. And unfortunately for Bruce Boudreau, I've said this before about him. If you want to get to the playoffs, he's your guy. If you want to go far in them, you got to head for the hills. I mean, that's basically what it is with him. But very unfortunate. This is one of those series I'd be reluctant to bet. This is one series where the sweep, I think, could happen at this point. I don't know if there's any will left in that Minnesota team after that loss yesterday. Lean to the Blues maybe a little bit as a short home favorite in Game 4, which is actually not until Wednesday, I believe. Yes, Wednesday is Game 4 of that series, but St. Louis about a -110, -115 favorite there. All right, we've got two series left to go through in the West. Anaheim, Calgary. We've got Anaheim just doing what they do, beat Calgary and Anaheim. They're only 29 straight times now they've done that. Unbelievable streak for the Ducks in Anaheim against Calgary. But now Calgary back home, chance to at least get their foot back in the series. But really, are they back in the series until they win a game in Anaheim, which is something they haven't done in 13 years? That's the problem. Eventually, Calgary's going to have to win a game in Anaheim if they're going to win this series, and have not shown the ability to do that whatsoever. I'll tell you what, this is a game tonight where we see the total of 5. And when you look at these first two games, it's been a penalty box parade, especially on the Calgary side. There's been a ton of penalties, ton of power play opportunities, one of the most chippy, most physical series of the first round. I don't see what changes here, and for that reason, I think Anaheim's power play has been rolling, by the way, with these Calgary penalties, but Calgary's power play hasn't gotten it going. I think back home it will get going a little bit. This is one of those games I'd look up and over the total of 5 here in this game. I don't like a ton of overs the way things have been going with those, but I think based on that in-series handicap of there being a lot of penalties here in this series between these two teams means there's going to be a lot of power play opportunities. I know we've got two very good goalies, and Brian Elliott and John Gibson here both have played well. But, if these penalties keep on accumulating at the rate they have in the first two games, there's going to be some overs in this series, and I think we might see one tonight. It's worth noting, over the total wagers in the Stanley Cup playoffs in a 2-0 series, and the team down 2-0 is playing Game 3 at home, we've seen a long-term subset where we've seen games go over the total in that situation. Look at Pittsburgh-Columbus, Game 3 yesterday. Columbus down 2-0, playing at home. Game flies way over the total. So I think a little first period over might be worth a look, because I think Columbus, again, really was aggressive from the onset, down 2-0 at home. I think you're going to see that from Calgary. So I'm looking at a first period over, maybe looking at a full game over here in this game, especially with the penalty problems on both sides in this series, especially Calgary. I mean, their discipline level has been non-existent. They've given Anaheim way too many power plays. They talked about correcting it after Game 1, and they didn't in Game 2. I don't see what changes here. It's just one of those series where people are getting under other people's skin, and you're seeing penalties. And as a result, you're going to see probably more power play opportunities here tonight.
Like you mentioned, the mission for the Calgary Flames coming into this initially is going to be strictly just to stay out of the penalty box. I mean, let's face it, you can't get your star guys on the ice if you're always in penalty box and having penalty trouble. Looking at this Anaheim Ducks team, they have the veterans. They're composed. They look like they're just kind of doing their thing, Ian. I know it sounds very casual to say that, but it kind of looks to me like they're just going out there and playing their kind of hockey. And in my opinion, if it's going to be a rough type of series, that actually favors the older and more experienced Anaheim Ducks. Right now, the difference between the toughness of the Calgary Flames and the toughness that the Anaheim Ducks are showing is that it's not really benefiting their game for Calgary, whereas Anaheim is kind of buying right into their system. You and I talked about it in our preview show last week, where Anaheim is looking to win games 3-1. They're fine winning games 2-1. If they get a couple early goals tonight, Ian, they're going to look to protect that lead. They're not going to keep pounding you down the neutral zone. They're just going to clog it up and make sure nothing gets in, and then keep sending pucks deep. And that's the thing about this Anaheim Ducks team. Mentioned a couple times so far in this video about production. Right now, the Calgary Flames are used to getting those pretty plays all year. Sean Monahan making his nice, cute plays. Right now, we need to see him get in those dirty areas, get some tip-ins, stuff like that. And that's kind of the biggest thing that's really stuck out to me this playoffs, is that it's going to be those goals and those people that work that extra length and that much harder that are going to get rewarded. And that's why this Anaheim team has been successful so far. I mean, you look at their goals, they haven't had too many, TSN highlight of the night goals. They're just doing their thing and putting pucks in the net. And with Gibson back there, he makes them confident. And just looking long term in this series, I just can't see the Calgary Flames winning in Anaheim, 1, and 2, continuously putting up numbers against this Anaheim Ducks team and John Gibson.
Yeah, and when you look at the first 2 games of this series, we've had 66 plus shots on goal total in both games. So there's been pucks fired at the net in this series. I think Calgary's got to come off the hop. I think you're going to see Calgary play their best game of the series, but I'm not sure I'm ready to lay minus 130. I think it's well priced that Calgary needs this game, is back at home, have played pretty good hockey on home ice. I mean, what if Calgary's up? You could be laying minus 130 here with Calgary tonight, and I'd lean that way, but not sure if I'll bet it at that price. But you could be up 3-2 late in this hockey game if you're Calgary. You played a great game, you got a 1-goal lead. What if Dougie Hamilton decides, I'm going to take a run at somebody, take a penalty, or Mark Giordano does that? Or Michael Furlan does that for this Calgary team. And then all of a sudden you give Anaheim a late power play. They tie the game. They've got momentum if it goes to overtime, and maybe they win it. I mean, that's the big fear. They could be up 1 goal, and they do what they've done in the first 2 games, take an ill-timed penalty, an ill-advised penalty at a bad time. Next thing you know, they're giving Anaheim life that they shouldn't have. So that's a big issue, Calgary's discipline problem.
Are you more worried about their defense and their non-discipline, or are you more worried about their scoring abilities right now?
I think their scoring ability will improve a little bit at home. I mean, this team actually at home down the stretch in the regular season did do a better job offensively. Last time they played Anaheim at home, it was a 4-3 hockey game. Should note it went over the total. Scored 3 goals, scored 5 goals in a home win against San Jose. So they scored 3 or more goals 3 of their last 4 games, just in a short sample size there. But 3 of their last 4 home games in the regular season scored 3 or more goals. They're a better offensive team at home. I think the home ice is going to help them a little bit. It's still going to be tough because Anaheim is really digging in. Gibson's been fantastic this season head-to-head against Calgary. But I do think home ice, you'll see a very aggressive mindset from Calgary, much like you saw from Columbus when they were down 2-0 at home last night. They came out really putting pucks at the net. I think you see that from Calgary tonight. Will it be enough to win? That remains to be seen, but staying out of the box, that would go a long way to helping their cause. All right, let's go. Last series of this Stanley Cup betting show to break down is the one that may be the most shocking of all. The veteran, 3 Stanley Cups since 2010. I'm talking about the Chicago Blackhawks, down 2-0 to the Nashville Predators and getting shut out by a combined score of 6-0. 6-0 in the first 2 games of this series at the United Center, at the Madhouse on Madison. And they get shut out 6-0 in 2 games combined. Pecorine all of a sudden looks like Marty Brodeur, or at least the Blackhawks are making him look that way. This is a guy that you don't know usually game to game if he's going to be great or if he's going to be a sieve. It's going to be usually one or the other, and he's been great so far for Nashville in the first 2 games of this series. Look, the way I look at Game 3 tonight, Chicago's on the road. Maybe that helps them out a little bit. There's nothing on the ice that tells you Chicago you should bet them tonight. They have been the inferior team by leaps and bounds in this series. Nashville's dominated them. Let's not kid ourselves. This has been domination. This has been the sound of silence, Simon and Garfunkel style, from Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, Artemi Panarin. Duncan Keith's made no impact, none, 0 so far on this series. All these big guys, and Hossa, where's he been? I mean, they all have to step up. This is the veteran leadership core that has led the Chicago Blackhawks to all their successes in recent years. It's time for them to step to the plate tonight. Down 2-0 in the series, can't fall behind 3-0. I do expect a much better effort from Chicago. I mean, this is too much of a veteran group with too many Stanley Cups to their name, too much playoff experience, too much pride. Jonathan Taves has pride. Patrick Kane has pride. Hossa has pride. They have pride. They played like shit the other night in that 5-0 loss. They'll even admit that. It was an abysmal effort. Once Nashville got that first goal, it was turn out the lights, go to sleep, go home. That was it. The Chicago was terrible after that. That early goal that Nashville scored, and there was no response at all from Chicago after that. They played a horrible game from that point on. I would be shocked if Chicago plays a horrible game tonight. I think you see that effort. I think you see that pride. I can only bet Chicago tonight in Game 3. I got to believe there's some pride, there's some hunger deep down inside that, hey, we're better than this. We know that. We've won Stanley Cups. We have to play better tonight. Take nothing away from Nashville, though. If Nashville plays as well as they did in the first 2 games, even a motivated Chicago team may still not be able to beat them tonight. They've still got to show they can put a puck past Pekka Rinne. Boy, that was tough to say. But yeah, put a puck past Pekka Rinne and see if they can finally solve him. That's where it's got to start for the Chicago team. And use your speed. Move your feet. Try to draw some penalties. They haven't drawn enough penalties either in this series on this Nashville team. They haven't moved their feet well enough. They've been lazy at times. Let's see what Chicago has in their belly tonight. I think you see a great effort from them tonight. I'd have to lean to them, but I'm not taking anything away from Nashville. This blue line of Subban, Roman Josi, Ekholm, Ryan Ellis, they've matched the Chicago blue line. Their big guns are playing better. Arvidsson, Forsberg's been quiet, but still they're getting contributions from more of their big forwards in terms of making key plays than Chicago's. They deserve this 2-0 series lead. We'll see if they have that killer instinct in them in Game 3 tonight.
I mostly see stuff like this happening in the NBA. Right now, you look at the NBA, there's been a lot of underdogs winning on the spread or even money line. And right now, it looks to me like this Chicago Blackhawks team came in a little bit too confident. They were almost shocked. They were surprised by what they saw out of this Nashville Predators team. And the thing about this Nashville team is usually they're very defensive and they score minimal amounts. To lose 5-0 yesterday, and the fact that, Ian, they haven't scored a goal yet. This is, Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Marian Hossa. This is unbelievable. They've got Duncan Keith back there, Brent Seabrook. And like you mentioned, they have not gotten enough production on their power plays. I mean, power plays are definitely one thing this Chicago Blackhawks team is used to burying on. They capitalize. Let's face it, that's one thing that they usually can be dominant on and they can really make good use of. I'm not really completely sold on if I'm going to make a bet on this game or even advise on this game just because you don't really know what's going to happen. It's really up in the air. But one thing I will give a lot of credit to right now is that the fact that Nashville does not play a one-dimensional game. They are defensive and they are offensive. They are not just a one mindset type of team. They have been taking care of things on both sides of the ice. And if you look at their goals, it's been after a great defensive play, and they make an excellent defensive play, shut down a goal scorer for the Blackhawks, push the puck up to their forwards, and off to the races they go. So I'm going to let everybody out there watching right now, don't ever just bet because a team is down or not doing well. It's okay to take a game off. Right now, that's probably what I'll do for the Chicago Blackhawks team versus Nashville. If anything, a little bit of light action on the Blackhawks, simply, Ian, just because, like you mentioned, I just can't see them getting that dominated with the players that they have.
Yeah, it's tough. I made a small case for Chicago here in this game tonight, but for that reason, the veteran leaders on this team, they've got a better game in them. We all know it. We've seen it throughout many years, including this season. There's a better game in this Chicago team. There's no question about it. But if you believe in Nashville having a distinct matchup advantage, which they've had in the first 2 games, and you believe in that big time and you're convinced by it, then I can't fault anyone maybe looking at the Nashville side tonight in Game 3, even though it's a desperation, almost near must-win spot for the veteran Chicago team. Because you're right, Nashville has hemmed Chicago in their own zone many times throughout this series. Corey Crawford, I don't know if he's had a chance on a lot of the goals, but still, he's been out-goaltended just a little bit by Pekka Rinne here so far in this series. He can elevate his game a little bit more, but really it's all about the core of this team being really fast asleep in the first 2 games. Can you really expect Patrick Kane and Toews and Hossa and Panarin and all of these down the list, Keith and Seabrook down the list? Can you expect these guys to really be invisible for a 3rd straight game in this series? I have a hard time believing that. We'll see if Chicago's got it. I'll tell you right now, Chicago plus 330 series price, current adjusted series price. Tempting. I'm not going to touch it until I see them win a game here tonight. Maybe then I'll get involved. I'll get a worse price if they win tonight, but maybe then I'll consider a series price bet on Chicago. But what an adjustment. I mean, Chicago was like minus 190, I believe, series price favorite going in. And now Nashville, almost a 4-1 favorite, almost minus 400 series price. What an adjustment after 2 games. So we'll see. This is it for Chicago. I think they've got to win this game tonight in order to come back and win this series. All right.
If anything, I would take the over on that game as well.
Yeah, you know what? I it may happen. Maybe we see a Chicago breakout tonight. I would certainly. I've been looking to play the over in this series. I said it would be one of the more higher scoring series, and Nashville's done their part, particularly in Game 2. But Chicago hasn't been able to solve Rene. So I stayed off that over tonight. But in theory, if Chicago does break out offensively tonight and finds a couple of pucks past Rene, that game probably has a chance to get up and over the total tonight for sure. All right, we've gone a little longer than we expected, 45 minutes, but it was worth it to give you all the quality betting analysis of each of the 8 first-round series. That is going to wrap up our second episode of our NHL Stanley Cup betting show, talking about NHL Stanley Cup playoffs from a betting perspective. We'll be back next week. I believe it'll probably be Monday again at this same time with another Stanley Cup betting show as we break down probably into the tail end of the first round at that point, and maybe inching our way toward the second round. So make sure you join us here next Monday for another NHL Stanley Cup betting show. As always, check out sportsbookreview.com every day. Live odds, articles, videos, sportsbook rating guide. All the information you need to be a successful winning bettor is at sportsbookreview.com. Andrew, any last words before we sign off?
I'm just really looking forward to the games tonight. I think that heading into the tail ends of this series, I'm just looking to see the Boston Bruins stay strong. Like I mentioned in the first game, Montreal Canadiens will continue their dominance. They're going to start scoring. They've already started scoring, and Carey Price is their defensive man. He's their third defenseman back there. Yeah, a little Twitter plug for myself. I tweet during the games. Live bets, live opinions. If I have some late thoughts on a game, you could follow me on Twitter at McGinnis Picks, MCINNIS Picks, and definitely will feel free to interact with me, and I'll definitely tweet back at you. I love to talk sports, and I'll be tweeting out a lot of my plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, a great follow on Twitter there for sure. McInnes Picks, he's been tweeting opinions, not just about hockey. I've seen even NBA and baseball as well. He follows those other sports too, much like I do. So yeah, make sure you follow him on Twitter. McInnes Picks, of course, I'm on Twitter at Bobano. I tweet out free plays, my video links, all that kind of thing, opinions on a variety of different sports. So on Twitter at Bobano, where you can find me, and follow Andrew on Twitter as well. That'll wrap it up, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs, and good luck.